Foz.
Hi, Crystal.
Our second interview, third interview, but second video interview.
Yeah.
And I'm really excited because I feel like in our first interview, we ended up just chatting about life, which is always really nice. But we're here in your office today where you do your nutrition consulting and you do your organic facials, and I just feel like we're in your element, so I want you to be in your element. And I just know that there are so many listeners of the podcast and so many viewers of your website who really want to tap into your knowing in this area. So that's what I want to do today.
Okay, great.
So if you have just stumbled on this little coupling of Fauzia and me, and you haven't listened to any of our other interviews, episode 5 of the podcast has our first interview, and it's just sort of a life chat between us. And you did share a lot of your journey.
Yeah.
And kind of what led you here. But if you could introduce yourself to our audience and just quick overview of what led you to this place and this office, I think that would be a great place to start.
Okay, sure. So I'm Fauzia Morgan. I'm a certified nutrition consultant. I'm also a holistic esthetician. I'm a licensed esthetician. I got licensed back in 2005, so that was sort of the beginning of my journey. So I grew up with a lot of health issues, really bad digestion is what it started with. I grew up in a stressful home, like so many people do, and I'm very, very sensitive. So it really affected me, it really affected my health. The bad digestion turned into imbalanced hormones and mood disorders, anxiety and depression. I had really painful periods starting at the age of 16, and then starting at around the age of 12, 13, I started getting really bad acne. And I had that till I was about 25.
Ugh,
yeah.
It's the worst.
It was awful, and it really wrecked my self-esteem. You know, I just remember all I wanted was to feel pretty. All I wanted was clear skin. And I ate a lot of gluten, a lot of dairy, a lot of sugar. I was on a lot of antibiotics for my acne, which was sort of the standard at that time. That was 30 years ago almost.
Wow. I would think it would exacerbate it.
It did.
Yeah.
Because it was exacerbating my gut issues,
right,
which I already had, and then everything starts in the gut. So if your gut is out of balance, everything else is going to be out of balance. So it was this really awful vicious cycle. So I started kind of getting some inklings about my own health and wellness when I was in high school. My grandmother on my dad's side, she and I also had a very close relationship, and she was really into home remedies and everything that she learned growing up in East Africa, and my family's East Indian. So there's this really rich heritage and this rich knowledge and understanding that whole foods are better than refined foods, that you can get nutrients from the food that you're eating. That my grandmother used to always say, if you're sick, instead of just taking vitamin C, eat an orange, that kind of thing. So I had some different influences in my life, and after I graduated from college, I really started experimenting with my health. I knew that I was sensitive to soy, that it really acted like a downer for me. It made me feel very depressed. I stopped having dairy, stopped drinking milk, senior year of college. I remember I had this sort of aha moment, and I was like, oh my gosh, this stuff makes me really sick. So I switched to soy, but then soy was creating this feeling of depression, and I really noticed that I was drinking soy milk. So I stopped having that around age 24, 25, right around the time that I went to aesthetic school. So it was, it's this sort of ongoing thing, and that's what it is. It was ongoing, it's still going on, it's never gonna stop until the day that I die, It's like that for everyone, whether you know it or not. So after college, I started seeing an acupuncturist. I really started exploring alternative ways of caring for myself. And I always had this deep intuition, you know, like I just knew. I knew that certain things didn't work for me. I ate really healthy, but didn't even realize it. I remember people at work would say like, wow, you eat really healthy. Like a snack for me was an apple and peanut butter. And I didn't think that was necessarily anything special or healthy, but other people noticed that. So, you know, it was just always something. I don't know who taught me that. I have no idea. It just was this like inner knowing that I've always had. And then I started working at Pharmaca Integrative Pharmacy in Seattle when I was around, I think it was around 25, and noticed that I was really able to help people who would come in, they'd have these skin issues, and I worked in the health and beauty section, basically. But I would get all of these supplement trainings from all the companies that would come in who were our vendors. So I had this really deep knowledge of all of the supplements and what they do, and you know, mixed with my own personal knowledge and all of my self-experimentation. So from that, actually it was my husband Ben who was like, you should go to school and become an esthetician because you have a knack for this. And I was like, ooh, no, I don't want to pick at people's faces, you know. And then 6 months later, I had my own aha moment, and I was like, Ben, I'm gonna go to school and become an esthetician. And he was like,
good idea.
Great, great idea, good one. So I did, and I was hoping that I would love it, and I loved it. And I don't know why, I just have a knack for it. You know,
yeah,
not just, thank you, not just for the skin diagnosis and knowing what's going on with someone's skin, but just the physical part of it and the energetic part of it and all that goes into a facial. And then I also did have this, like from the beginning, I just knew I could look at someone's face and feel their skin, and I knew like, oh, I'm pretty sure you don't tolerate gluten because I can feel it in your skin, or you know, this area right here is like, if you have a lot of breakouts here, you're most likely very sensitive to dairy. And then it also goes along with like Chinese facial mapping and that kind of thing, you know, and it's like if you get breakouts in your jaw, on your jawline and your chin and like here on your neck, you know, this is hormones and this is liver, and I had all of that, you know, and I had the cystic acne, I had all the types of acne. I had it on my face, I had it all over my back. I didn't wear tank tops for my entire, you know, like teenage years into my early 20s because I was so self-conscious of my skin.
Well, yeah.
And I'm a perfectionist, so I was not okay.
You're literally an esthetician.
I'm literally, and I think I've been an esthetician at heart my whole life.
Cool.
And aesthetics, as you know, are so important to me because it just really feeds my soul, not in a superficial way, just in this way that it feels good to me. And so I had a very full practice in Seattle, and when I was doing aesthetics, it was always holistic, it was always organic, and I would do a lot of consulting with my clients about their diet and their lifestyle. And so then fast forward to it was 2015 when I decided to go back to school. I had 2 kids by then. I had a hard time getting pregnant with my first, so I actually had closed my practice in Seattle because I just wanted to focus on healing my body. I was very exhausted from working so much. And then got pregnant, and then we moved to Hawaii when he was about 20 months old. And then 6 months later, I got pregnant with my second, and it was very, very easy to get pregnant the second time, which was awesome. And I had very uneventful pregnancies, but a really hard time postpartum. And then especially after Felix, my youngest, my thyroid went crazy, and I was super exhausted, and I had chronic fatigue. But in the middle of all of that, I started a blog sharing my recipes. That was per the request of my girlfriends, who were like, you make it look so easy, teach us how to do it. And then I wanted to take it even further, and I went to school to become a nutrition consultant, and again was hoping that I would love it, and I absolutely do. And I had the most incredible teacher during my experience. I went to Bowman College, and it was an online program, so I did it from the comfort of my own home, and had 2 young children, and then my husband also went through open heart surgery during that time. So it took me about 2.5 years to finish school. But during that time, I also had some big health revelations. I was diagnosed with Epstein-Barr syndrome, which validated my thought, my feeling for the last 20 years that I had chronic fatigue syndrome, because I did. And so since then, I've really healed my body. I don't have chronic fatigue anymore, and I can say that, and it feels amazing to say that. So now, I have a practice doing, holistic nutrition consulting, organic facials. I really love it. I really want to take everything that I've gone through and everything that I've learned, and also my intuition around all of it, and help people, help people reach their goals, help people to tap into their own intuition, because the picture of health and wellness, it's gonna look different for everybody, and the way that you get there is very different from the person next to you. It's so unique, it's so individualized, and I think where people get tripped up is that they want this formula, or they want to do what their friend is doing because it worked so well for their friend, but how come it's not working for me? And so really my goal is just to let people know that it is a completely unique journey, and that you have that inner wisdom. I'm here to help you tap into it and recognize it and listen to it.
And validate it.
And validate it, yeah.
Which is I feel like so many people kind of already know, but they don't know that they know until they hear it from you.
Right. Yes.
That's why I hire coaches. Tell me the things that I already know, but that I can't see.
Yeah. Or that I feel crazy for thinking.
Right.
Because
it's in my body, but my mind says something else.
Exactly.
Or my friend says something else. Or Instagram says something else.
Right. Or my doctor says something else.
Yes. That's a big one.
That's a big one.
Yeah, doctors are typically more in their head.
Yeah.
But you're very, in your body, so you're able to, meet people at that level. Or have them meet you at that level, where it's you're so in your body that you can kind of see things beyond what's in your head.
Right, and you're so much more than your lab results. And that was a big thing with me. It's why it took me over a decade to get diagnosed with hypothyroidism, why it took 20 years for a doctor to say to me, let's figure this out. What is going on with you? To finally test me for Epstein-Barr, and to see it and to recognize it and to validate it. Because for me, with my thyroid stuff, my labs always looked normal. And it wasn't until I started taking thyroid medication after I was diagnosed by a functional medicine practitioner, an MD here in town, but he practices functional medicine, integrative medicine, and specializes in thyroid. And they were the ones who said, oh yeah, you have low thyroid. And I felt so validated. And it wasn't until I started taking the medication, thyroid hormone, that's when my lab started to look abnormal. It actually looks like I'm hyperthyroid if you're just looking at at one marker, TSH.
But you feel right.
I feel right and normal.
So I need to ask, how common do you think this is? Because I know, just from the little stint of, wellness stuff that I was doing, I feel like the thyroid stuff is so common, and that a lot of the symptoms are there, but then there's no diagnosis. I mean, is
That's
it
very common. It's grossly underdiagnosed. It's very misunderstood. the way that doctors have been taught to read labs and to diagnose thyroid issues is pretty outdated.
Mm-hmm.
And they just recently kind of changed the way that they read the lab results. But even so, there are so many different markers for thyroid hormones and what's going on with the thyroid hormones. Most people only test TSH, which is thyroid stimulating hormone. The higher that number is indicates that you have an issue. If it's greater than, I think now it's like 2.5, is like sort of, that's the normal range is, I think, is between 0.5 or around 1 and 2.5. If you're above 2.5, that's an indicator that you have low thyroid, because the higher the number, it means that your thyroid is trying really, really, really hard to manufacture that hormone and it can't. If you're on the other end of the spectrum, you can be hyperthyroid, and that can happen too. And that's, I think, a little bit easier to diagnose, but it's not as common. So it is really common, and what I tell people is when they come to me and they say, my thyroid's fine, I had it tested, you know, they tell me all their symptoms, like,
what are they?
Oh, so many. I'm cold all the time, I've gained weight, and I have no idea why. You know, I haven't changed anything. They have fatigue.
Mm-hmm.
Fatigue is one of the biggest ones.
Now, not to interrupt, but about fatigue, like, what is the difference between I'm a mom and I work full time and I'm taking care of everyone else and I just haven't taken time to rest, and low thyroid fatigue? So if you're the first situation where, you know, things are in your body, they're functioning normally, but you're a very busy mom, you're working full time, you've got kids, you're exhausted, you're not getting enough sleep, you're probably not getting enough really good nutrition, that's usually, if you get the food and you get the rest that you need, you will feel better. Mm-hmm. You can bounce back. Mm-hmm. You can still have pretty bad fatigue, and it doesn't involve your thyroid, but you've got adrenal burnout, which is really common. Yeah.
The thyroid fatigue, in my experience, and in the experience of the women that I talk to, and it is mostly women, and I work mostly with women too, so that's the information that I have. It's this sluggishness. Mm-hmm. It's the inability to get up off of a chair or to get out of bed.
Sounds familiar for me right now.
And then there's pregnancy. There's like super pregnancy.
Yeah, but it's a different kind of.
It's different, you know, and it's not just the fatigue, there's other things that go along with it. So like for me, for example, after I had Felix and things really went haywire for me, I remember I was sitting at my kitchen table and I could see into the kitchen, and there was a very ripe papaya that I really wanted to eat.
I'm imagining like a cartoon where the smell is like...
It was wafting towards me, and it was like this just gorgeous, like juicy, plump papaya, you know, and like there's nothing I love more than a ripe papaya. I just love it. And I was sitting at the table on my chair, and I was like, I want that in my mind. I want that so bad, but I can't get up to get it. Mm-hmm. The thought of getting up off the chair, getting a plate, and getting a knife and a spoon to scoop out the seeds, no.
Yeah.
But there's other stuff that goes along with it. There's a lot of brain fog. Mm. There's joint pain. Mm-hmm. There's achiness in the body. An overwhelming desire to sleep, or sometimes sleep is very disrupted. So it's all these other things that go along with it. People get ridges on their fingernails. I remember sitting with a friend of ours, actually it was right after Felix was born, and she had actually come to my house. Because she had picked Nikhil up from school that day, and she was sitting next to me, and she had been struggling with her weight. And she had been doing all the right things. She was eating a paleo type diet, you know, like healthy, high quality proteins, lots of vegetables, low carb, keeping her blood sugar balanced. She was working out all the time. She was taking care of herself. She wasn't overworking. She wasn't working out too much. She was getting enough sleep. And she couldn't shed this weight. She was gaining weight. She didn't know why. And I remember she was losing her hair. So that's another thing too with thyroid issues. You can be hyperthyroid or hypo. You can be high or low, and you'll lose your hair. That's a common symptom. And so she had been losing her hair too. And I had been telling her, like, I think that you might have a thyroid issue. And she's like, I went to my doctor and she said it was fine. And I'm like, try again. Ask your doctor to test these other markers. But it has so much to do with who your doctor is and how they interpret the results. So they actually, and I remember it's because she had crazy ridges. Like her fingernails were just so bumpy and had so many ridges on them. And I was like, I really think you have low thyroid, and then she told me what her TSH was, and it was really high, but her doctor decided that was normal. So then after they moved off island, they moved to the mainland, and I remember I think she messaged me maybe like 6 months after they had moved, and she was like, you were right, it was my thyroid, and I'm feeling so much better now.
So you could just be doing all the right things.
Absolutely.
And still have an issue.
My whole life I was doing all the right things. Like once I figured out my food sensitivities and all of that. But my friends have always said, like, no one takes better care of themselves than you do. And I was like, well, why do I feel so lousy all the time?
That's so wild.
Yeah.
So is that like a common, like the women that come to see you, is that one of the common issues? Or
it's something that I see about 50% of the time.
Wow.
Yeah. And whether it gets diagnosed or not, that's a different story. So I would say even more, yes, definitely 50% of the time. And then something that people run into, that's something that my clients regularly run into, is that I say, okay, here's the list of the tests that you need to get. So these are all the thyroid markers, and I want you to ask your doctor to test you for these things. And they go to their doctor, and their doctor says, you don't have low thyroid. You don't have Hashimoto's, which is autoimmune thyroiditis.
And that's really common, isn't it?
It's so common.
Yeah, I know. I feel like I know so many people with Hashimoto's.
Yeah, so many people. So, and it's about 80% of the people who have low thyroid have Hashimoto's.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And then there's like the other 20%, it's a mixture of hyperthyroid or thyroid disease or thyroid cancer. And then there's this like unknown group, and that's what I fell into. So what happens is, people go to their doctor, and their doctors have good intentions, but they're going from what they know, and they also don't want to get into it with the insurance companies, right? So it's this whole song and dance, and what people don't realize too is that you can stand your ground. And that you have a right to your health care. You have to be your own health advocate.
And that's really hard sometimes, I think.
It's super hard because you have this doctor who is, an authority figure.
White coat syndrome.
Yeah, right? And they know way more than we do about medical stuff.
Right.
And they're doing what they know, and they're staying in their lane. So they'll go to their doctor, and the doctor will turn them away basically. And they come back to me, and I'm like, so did you get your thyroid testing done? No, he said I don't have low thyroid. Or she said I don't need to get the test done. And it's so frustrating for me. And so I coach people on, this is how you approach it. This is how you go about it. And then also you gotta know who to go to. So luckily there are doctors in town who, who I know, who I have relationships with, or who I just know have a different way of looking at the testing. And it's not just thyroid, So the other thing with thyroid issues, and this is something that a lot of times, and I've seen it happen over and over again, and it happened to me, is that postpartum stuff comes up. Stuff happens. That happened to me. It happened to one of my best friends from college. I remember meeting this woman at the zoo when Felix was just a tiny baby. It was actually the day after I started taking thyroid medication and felt like myself again. And I was like, boys, we're going to the zoo today. Like, mommy's back. And so I was sitting on a bench and I was nursing Felix and Nikhil was playing at the playground. And there was this woman sitting on the bench next to me, also had a little baby. I think the baby was a little bit older. And she asked me about my baby, you know, how old is he? And I said, oh, he's about 3-4 months. I think it was 4 months at that point. And she said, oh, wow. She's like, you look so beautiful. You look so good and calm. I wish that I felt that way. And I was like, girl, you have no idea what
we compare.
We compare. But I was like, you have no idea what I've been through. I was like, this is the first day in 4 months, basically, that I have felt somewhat normal. And we started talking. And it turns out that she had postpartum Hashimoto's. She was diagnosed with Hashimoto's postpartum. And it's this thing that happened. And the reason why, I mean, it does make sense, you know, like our hormones go through this big shift. But I think that what people don't realize is that no matter how smooth, no matter how beautiful your birth was, no matter how uneventful your pregnancy was, childbirth is traumatic.
Yeah.
But a lot of people don't think of it that way. And they don't want to recognize that because, hello, after you have a kid, it's like your whole world is turned upside down anyway. The last thing you want to be thinking about is the trauma of your childbirth. I mean, I personally haven't even completely processed what I went through during my first childbirth. You know, I still have to process that because life kind of went on and, you know.
I think it's so interesting too because especially in our country, birth is so medicalized.
Yeah.
You know, and seen as this emergency trauma situation.
Right.
Which, like, you know, the act of birth is so natural, but then, like, you know, it's like postpartum, you know, you have this baby and it's like, okay, like,
yeah, bye, you're done.
Bye, you know.
Do your thing.
You're good. And so I feel like it's a little bit backwards in that way. But also, like the way I see it, and it is traumatic, but like that has such a heavy connotation. The way I see it, and I certainly had a different experience than you did, but like I'm like my body like kind of died, and then just like it's like a new body. So it's, I don't know, for me I'm like it's less trauma and more like cocoon to butterfly type thing, where you're just like it's a complete transformation, so you just can't even look at your body
in the same way. Well, I bring up trauma because for the women like me and like so many women I know, that trauma basically triggers that shift and the ensuing illness, basically. That state of complete chaos inside your body. And so for me, that's when, after I had Felix, my second, that's when I think the Epstein-Barr virus was triggered. And that is a theory.
That makes sense.
You know?
Totally.
So you know, they talk a lot about what happens with these viruses like herpes or Epstein-Barr, that, you know, for most people who have healthy immune systems, especially with Epstein-Barr, Epstein-Barr is monovirus. You get mono. I had it twice in my 20s, like twice within 1 year. I never felt the same after that. Now I know why. So for most people with healthy immune systems, they're able to recover from that, and the viral load leaves your body. For about 30% of those people, and that's the statistic, it could be, you know, I'm sure that's just, it could be off. I'm sure there's more people who have it than realize, but around 30% of those people who get mono, their body doesn't get rid of that virus. So it stays in the body. It creates this viral load that's always there. And it likes to get into the tissues. It likes to live in the thyroid. It lives in the nervous system. And it can be dormant. But then you have this event like pregnancy and childbirth, and that's where that trauma, that idea of that trauma, because it's a huge shift and a huge change, right?
Right.
And then it can trigger the Epstein Barr, and pretty sure that's what happened to me.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like so many women probably struggle with, if not Epstein Barr, something like that, where they have their baby and there is all this stress in the body. You know, but then also, it's like, what do you even do about it? What can I do?
Right.
How do I even get to the doctor?
Yeah, and it's such a, postpartum is such a crazy time, and like you brought up, there's a severe lack of support in our country. And then there's also this feeling that we should just be able to do it because we don't have these support systems in place. So it's like, oh, okay, well, I guess, like, you know, everyone else is just handling it, so like I should handle it, you know?
Right, and you know, I'm a mom, so I should be tired, and I should be a little bit cranky, and I should be all these different things. It's like, to a certain extent, that's probably true. Like, you go through a little bit of that, we all do.
Right.
But
then there's other people, other women who, you know, their situation is, it's not just, oh, you're a mom with a tiny baby.
Right, but how many women are in that situation and tell themselves this is normal?
So many.
Yeah.
And then you've got people, like I had my endocrinologist who said to me, like, oh yeah, he did an ultrasound of my thyroid, because I was like, I feel completely insane. I had such bad vertigo, which is another symptom of low thyroid, that I felt like I was going to drop the baby. And Felix was a baby. I held him, when he was a baby, I held him all the time. He was a baby who wanted to be held all the time. And I just personally like to hold my babies when they're tiny, you know? And I actually remember one day calling Ben and saying, like, you have to come home. My vertigo is so bad that, like, I feel like I'm going to drop Felix. I don't know what to do. I just didn't know what to do with myself. And I remember calling the doctor and wanting to get in. This is before I found the practice that really helped me and diagnosed me. And they just blew me off because I was crying on the phone. You know, I just was like, I was desperate. I was desperate. I had all the symptoms. And so I'm so grateful that I found a doctor who took me seriously. But yeah, I mean, there are so many women in these situations, and it can look different. I mean, it does look different for every woman. You know, the symptoms. Like, I met one mom who, you know, we were chatting one day at the playground, and she's like, oh my gosh, like, I like, my joint pain was so bad. I'd wake up in the morning after the birth of her second son. I think she has 3 kids now, but I think after the birth of her second, she's like, I couldn't get out of bed because my joints ached so much. But she was not the picture of low thyroid, right?
Right.
So again, what I tell people is, you are not your lab results. You know, go by your symptoms. You have to go by your symptoms.
Yeah.
And then you also have to find a doctor, find a practitioner who will listen to you, you know? So I will listen to you. I don't run tests because I'm not a medical doctor, but I can help you get to the bottom of what's going on or what I think is going on, and then, you know, we can explore testing and that kind of thing to figure it out. But yeah, I mean, there's joint pain, there's thyroid stuff, which goes with the joint pain goes with the thyroid stuff. There's fatigue that goes beyond just regular tiredness. It's like this chronic fatigue that women get, which is very related to Epstein-Barr and these other viruses. And then there's all of the, the mental health side of things, which also goes along with low thyroid. The anxiety, depression. I felt that I was unfit to be a mother. I was on this emotional roller coaster. I was hysterical, but then I'd be super like low and subdued, or I'd get really angry. I couldn't see. I couldn't.
Cannot imagine.
I couldn't tell up from down.
I cannot imagine going through that with a baby.
Yeah.
I'm like so grateful for my first experience and hoping for the second one, but like I can't imagine.
Yeah.
Dealing with it. I know so many people do though. Like I know so many people it goes beyond.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So you mentioned like probably about 50% of the people that you see like have some kind of issues like this, like thyroid issues. But what about the other people that you see? Like, because I think to myself, like, yeah, I'm a person who likes personal growth and like being healthy and figuring out like the best things for my body and my mind and everything. So I'm like, for me, like seeing you like as a nutrition consultant, like, yeah, like let's do some stuff. Let's figure out like what kind of supplements I can take for superpowers or whatever.
Right.
But like what other kinds of people come to you? Mm-hmm. Like, is it usually they have an issue or they just wanna? What is it?
Yeah. So sometimes it is, some people feel like if I don't do something now, something bad's gonna happen. Like they're basically like on this like fast-moving train, and the picture looks like stress and high blood pressure and mood swings, lots of anger and frustration, or depression and anxiety. So there's that. There's people who have gut issues, digestion problems, and they just feel like I used to be able to eat all these foods and now I can't eat them anymore. Like what's going on with me? So there's that. There's people who are getting older. Women are getting older, and women and men, I've worked with both, who are like, okay, I'm in my late 50s, early 60s. I want to, maybe they have a little bit of like a blood pressure issue, or they've been diagnosed with like gout or like something like that, like some kind of like health issue, which is very manageable, but they want to make sure that it doesn't get worse. And they want to set themselves up for success, for the future, and create these healthy habits. So there's that. There's people who want to lose weight, and there's so many factors that go into, especially with women, why women are gaining weight, even at a very young age, like in their 20s, and they don't really understand why. They used to be so fit in high school and in college, and then like, things just started to fall apart after they graduated from college.
I think that's really common.
It's really common, and hormones can really shift and change. Stress plays a huge part of that picture. I mean, stress is everything.
Yeah, it's like the umbrella, right?
It is. Yeah. It exacerbates everything. It's my biggest trigger for having Epstein-Barr flare-ups, internal stressors and external, and there's so many different ones.
So many.
Different for every person. So, there's people wanting to maintain or kind of get back to a healthy weight. Fertility is another one. I work with women who are either just wanting to prep their bodies to get as healthy as possible before trying to conceive, or women who are, a year or two or more into the process of trying to get pregnant, and they want help with their fertility. And and it's not just what do I eat, right? It's And I can relate because it took me almost 2 years to get pregnant with my first. And it was brutal. It was so hard. You know, it was really hard, and so it's nice to have that support. And there's people who know what they need to do. There's people who they eat pretty good diets, they know what they need to do, they exercise, but something's not quite right, and they want accountability.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's really, that's a huge part of what I do,
Mm-hmm.
is providing that accountability, and like you said before, that validation that like,
Mm-hmm.
this intuition that you have about your own body and what works for you and what doesn't work for you is right, and let's go from there. And
Mm-hmm.
that's how I approach things when I work with people. So I have people come in for the first time. Their first session is 90 minutes, and we always use up the full 90 minutes.
Oh yeah, I bet.
Because there's so much to talk about. We talk about all the health history, their habits, their diet, what's going on with them. It always goes deeper into emotional health
Mm-hmm.
and mental health. With women, we always end up talking about the importance of having healthy boundaries
Mm-hmm.
and self-worth. That always comes up if the person is receptive to that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a real meeting of the hearts, really. And then at the end, when we're about 20 minutes away from being done with the session, I say, okay, what has resonated with you? Where would you like to start? What
Mm-hmm.
feels good to you? Because I can tell people what to do, but if it doesn't resonate with them, they're not gonna do it.
So true. Mm-hmm.
And I don't want to keep meeting with you for the next 5 years because you're not meeting your goals. I am here to help you feel better as soon as possible.
Right.
So we're gonna do that in a way that's efficient.
Yeah. And
And
that feels good every step of the way. It's
exactly.
well, we really want to feel good, so we should do this thing now that doesn't really feel good to you.
Right.
That doesn't make any sense.
And we start with the low-hanging fruit.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, those little, I'm not in nutrition coaching, but any kind of coaching, it's like the little victories are what build up to the big ones.
Yeah, and once you have that little victory and you see oh, I did this, that wasn't that hard, and I feel so much better, or I'm way less bloated.
Yeah.
Or oh, I stopped eating junk food and I lost 3 pounds in 2 weeks or something.
Mm-hmm. So what are the biggest challenges? People come to you, they have some kind of plan, or even people that just kind of maybe are just watching you and your content. You always provide great tips for people, and they want to change. But I know that some people have something that's keeping them. What are those common things that keep them from really taking the steps and really just committing?
Yeah, there's so many. So there can be a lot of resistance,
To change, do you think, or
resistance to change. So there are certain things like coffee is a classic example. Caffeine. A little bit is fine if it works for you. For some people, it does not work for them at all. And it's pretty easy to kind of determine if it's working for you or not. If you're drinking coffee and then you're oh, I just can't sleep at night and I don't know why. It's let's try cutting out that coffee.
Right.
But oh my gosh, it's taking away someone's blankie. It's it's comfort in a cup. And then there's the ritual of it, it depends on whatever your ritual is around that. And it doesn't have to be coffee. It could be ice cream or, soda, your very favorite soda or something, but something that's not serving you, but it's such a source of comfort. So there's that. There is the fear that if I do all this and I try to do everything right, it's not going to work. So why try?
What is the point?
What's the point? So there's that. And then a really big roadblock for people is they want to make a change, but their family members are not on board. There's that. Either the family members are not on board, so there's lack of support, or there's the fear of making their family members do something that they don't want to do. You know, so like a common theme with moms is like, oh, but my kids love eating those chips, or they love those snacks after school. I don't want to take that away from them. So they're afraid of that, or, you know, they're afraid of like the fights. They're afraid of like the tension that it's going to create. Like they're afraid that it's going to create more stress for them, because change for most people is hard.
Yeah, it's uncomfortable.
It's uncomfortable. If you can get through that uncomfortable part, man, your life's going to be so much better.
Yeah.
You know, it really is. Like this work that I'm doing with people, it's life-changing.
Oh, I know.
It's really life-changing.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I have to meet people where they're at. And then there's, what I also see is, it might not be directly within someone's family, but like, you know, their circle of friends. It's very hard when, say you've got a group of friends that you go out with on a regular basis, you go to restaurants, you guys have a few cocktails. Well, all of a sudden you decide, like, you know what, you guys, I'm cleaning up my act. Like, I want to feel better. I want to be healthier. I'm creating these new habits. Your friends are just not on board because they don't want you to change. They don't want you to disrupt this thing that you've got going on.
Well, and I think too, sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes, like, that one person who decides to make a change becomes a mirror.
Yes, exactly.
For all of the things that you also want to change but aren't ready to change.
So it can feel very threatening to the people around us. People get very defensive. They basically feel like, oh, so if so-and-so is changing that, then, like, do they think that what I'm doing is bad?
Right.
You know?
Right.
So they take it very personally, you know?
So talking more about, like, obstacles.
Yes.
And excuses, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, because sometimes, like, yes, like, there's an actual block there for sure. Sometimes I think we use excuses as, like, a mask for a block. And then sometimes I think, I mean, like, legitimately there are logistical problems that arise that if you already aren't, like, fully invested, those little issues will be like, ugh, like, I don't have the energy for it. Which, like, I feel like I can relate to, because sometimes you're just, like, don't feel like you have the energy for things. But, but, like, what are some of those? Like, I know, you know, it's got to be hard to make a change, like you said before, like, if your family's not on board. Like, what do you do in that situation when you have a client who's like, yeah, okay, I'm ready, but, like, my husband's really resistant, or my kids are, you know, like, I don't want to be making 5 different meals.
Right.
Like, you know, what's your advice for people like that?
Well, first of all, there's just kind of like 2 sides to it. We do a little bit of coaching and kind of diving into what is preventing you from feeling like you deserve to make those changes for yourself, regardless of the people around you, right? Because most mothers and wives and partners, we feel very obligated to our families and to our other relationships. We don't want to throw things off. We don't want to throw off the balance. We don't want anyone to feel badly about themselves, you know, and it's like, oh my gosh, if I change, then, like, how are they going to feel? So, and that's not all the time. Other times, you know, a lot of women come in here and they're like, I got to change because I need my family to change. Like, I want to improve my health because I want to improve the health of my entire family.
Right.
But when it's the first situation, so we kind of dive into that and we kind of get into the psychology of that. And a lot of it is me giving them permission to do something for themselves. And we can usually get there really quickly, you know? And it's gonna look different for each person, but, you know, especially with moms, I tell them, like, if you are happy and healthy, you've got balanced blood sugar, which translates into more energy, a balanced, happy, positive mood. I mean, that's enough said right there,
I know.
right?
Really though.
Because, I mean, what do we all want aside from, like, just feeling happy and energized and, like, in a good mood and, like, balanced?
Right.
You know? And it's pretty easy to achieve that in most cases if we improve how we're eating so we can balance our blood sugar. So I always tell, you know, I relate it back to the family and relate it back to those relationships. Like, if you work on yourself and you do this for yourself, it's going to improve the lives of the people around you. Also, you're modeling really positive behavior and self-care for your family members, especially mothers who have daughters and sons, you know? So that's the first part of it, is like, that's like kind of like the mental, emotional, spiritual part of it. And then the logistical part of it, you know, it's like they're making all these excuses. Well, let's just start with one little thing.
Yeah, like what?
I mean, it could be as simple as switching out one soda a day for, like, water with lemon instead. It could be as simple as, okay, in addition to that toast that you're having in the morning, let's slap some almond butter on there, you know? So not making things complicated. I always meet people where they're at. Some people want very elaborate meal plans, and they want to go out and shop for the food and cook the food, and it's so fulfilling for them, and it lights them up, and they love it. Other people are like, I don't got time for that. So, like, you have to make this real simple. Like, tell me what I can eat and what I can't eat. But the other big thing, too, is, like, when people are making excuses, I really try to explain to them, like, why you should put almond butter on your toast in the morning. What's that going to do for you? So I try to paint that picture of, like, going beyond, like, adding almond butter to your toast in the morning is going to balance your blood sugar. They don't really care about that. No. They want to know, like you want to know, how's it going to make me feel? How's it going to improve my life?
Right.
You know? But you can't get those good outcomes unless you do the work. So we just start small. But yeah, people come in here with excuses all the time. All the time. A lot of times, I just say, okay, like, if they're not ready to change something,
right.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I mean, if you're not ready, you're not ready.
But then it also diffuses it. It, like, it takes the fire out of the situation, you know?
Yeah.
It just diffuses it.
Right.
It's like, okay, you don't have to do that right now. And you don't, and you shouldn't if you're not ready to.
What about the excuse of not having time to eat healthy? Which I feel like I'm so far past, like, personally, not to, like, be bragging about it, but, like,
no,
it's been a journey.
Yeah.
But, like, to the point where, like, I'm like, it takes me less time to eat this, like, really healthy snack than it does for something else. But, like, as an excuse, like, how do you address that?
Yeah, I mean, that's a big one, because some people are legitimately really strapped for time.
Yes.
You know, but then it's like this bigger issue. It's like, well, what do you have going on in your life that you've overcommitted to? You know, it always goes,
I know.
It goes so deep, right? So, but I do try to kind of, like, say, well, what are you doing with your time? And, like, what do you have in your schedule that is not really serving you?
Right.
So we kind of look at that a little bit. But what I say is just, again, start with the simple things. Like, just do simple things. You know, say, like, it's Sunday evening. Can you boil a half a dozen eggs? Can you just prep some hard-boiled eggs? So that you can have that. Throw it in your bag in the morning.
Right.
You know? So there's a lot of, like, grab and go kind of situations.
Yes. Yes.
And then as people start to feel better, they start to prioritize that, because it's really all about prioritizing. Yeah, there are some people who just have these insane schedules, but then there are other people who are doing other things with their time that they could really be using that time more wisely, in my opinion, to do a little prep.
Right.
You know?
Well, and, you know, if they're coming to see you, in their opinion, too, it's just like, it's hard to see sometimes, I think, in the beginning.
Exactly.
What about the money excuse?
Yeah, so eating healthy doesn't have to be expensive. Yeah, it's a lot cheaper to go to McDonald's, and it's...
I don't feel like it's...
In the short
here,
term. No, not here.
You're still going to spend $20. Oh, no. Oh, no, it's still going. I'll just edit that out. Yeah. Okay. You're still going to spend $20 at McDonald's in Hawaii, but yeah.
But also, you know, so people say like, oh, it's just so expensive. Like I have a client who I worked with recently, and she's like, well, it's just too expensive to eat healthy, you know? And so we just kind of went through it, and I'm like, well, let's look at the things that you can eat, and let's look at where you can buy those things. And, you know, what people don't know also is that ever since Amazon bought Whole Foods, produce there is cheap.
Cheaper than Costco.
Yeah, cheaper than Costco.
I know.
Better quality. Way cheaper than Safeway. Again, better quality.
Yeah.
So there's always ways to work around it, and I can always work within someone's budget. You know, you don't have to buy anything that's expensive.
That's the thing. It's like I'll go on Instagram, and there are some influencers or whatever, you know, who are posting like, oh, this new like hazelnut almond butter, like whatever, that's like $15 a jar, you know, and
17 or 18, yeah.
Right, or, you know, some of the more like the fun foods that are nourishing and like pretty good ingredients, but I'm just like, you know, those are the foods that I think can be perceived as like healthy, wellness, whatever, but like none of us need to eat those.
No, and there's all these superfoods, powders, and whatever, you know. It's like there was a bag of organic matcha powder at Whole Foods. It was $30 for a teeny tiny little bag, you know. Granted, like I did buy it, and it's lasting me a long time. But like, you know, that was like a splurge. Right. But it's like you don't have to buy the expensive matcha anything to be healthy. What people don't realize is that all you have to do is just figure out the foods that work for you and then eat in a balanced way throughout the day. So, you know, it's really not about doing anything fancy. It's just about identifying what works for you. And then also when, you know, people say like, oh, organic is so expensive. Well, yeah, it is. And there are some things that like absolutely, if you're going to eat them organic. You know, strawberries, apples, celery, they're heavily sprayed crops. I mean, if you have like an apple here and there and it's not organic, it's not going to kill you, you know?
Not now.
Right. And we don't know.
We don't know.
We don't know.
Potentially you died because you ate a non-organic apple.
Maybe. We'll see. So, you know, but it's like there's something called the Clean 15 and the Dirty Dozen. And the Dirty Dozen, the environmental working group comes out with a list every year of the most heavily sprayed crops. And so you basically want to try to make sure that you're buying organic varieties of those as much as possible. With the Clean 15, things like avocados and onions and stuff like that, like bananas. Like you don't need to buy organic onions and bananas and avocados, you know? So it's just really educating yourself, and you know, and I help with that. Like I'm gonna give you all the information that you need, and then we can come up with like, okay, well, can you buy that like big bag of quinoa from Costco, which is like cheaper than a small bag of quinoa at Whole Foods a lot of times. You know, can you buy that, and can you use that as your grain? You know, it's just ways to work around it. That's just one example. But and also I always tell people, do the best that you can do. Because if you're coming to me for help and we're going to change things up, whatever you start doing is going to be better than what you were doing before.
Totally.
Right? And it's going to help you to reach your goals. And
something's always better than nothing.
Something's always better than nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Completely.
So I have an answer for everything. I have an answer for every excuse. A workaround for every excuse.
I definitely do too. Yeah, especially with food, and like we don't eat the same way, but yeah, it goes back to that, like that real why. I'm like, I mean, like either you want to do it or you don't. Granted, I do have like my defined heart center in human design, so it's like I have that consistent like willpower and like, you know, ability to commit. So I understand that not everyone operates in that way, like where I was like, okay, I'm going vegan tomorrow, and then I did.
Right. But this is something too, and I think this is a misconception, is that you have to have a lot of willpower to eat healthy. Really, what you have to do is just set yourself up for success.
Right.
It's really about preparation. And yes, you know, like you have to sort of internalize why you're doing something and it's always good to have clarity in any realm of life, in every part of your life, to have clarity. Have clarity around why you're doing what you're doing, and then set yourself up for success. Don't bring the food into the house that you don't want to eat. And yeah, that gets tricky when you live with other people, especially, you know, if your husband or your partner or your wife doesn't eat in the same way that you do and they want to have their foods, then yeah, there's going to be some willpower involved in that. Right. If you have teenagers who have a mind of their own.
I'm just thinking of my mom, because we spent like the summer there.
Right.
And just being in that house with, you know, 4 teenagers, and you know, my stepdad, and then my mom, and then it was like me and my kid, the vegans, and it was just like,
right,
you know, everybody has their thing, and when they are teenagers, it's like you can't be like, no, you can't have that, or
right,
you know, we don't eat that. It's like,
yeah,
if they want it, they can literally go to the store and just buy it, you know, and then eat it in front of you. So yeah, I'm like, I understand that challenge.
Yeah.
And I think too, like, your environment is so important. It's like, if you're in an environment that's not conducive to like you getting better and making healthy choices and prioritizing yourself, I think it's just so easy to like fall back into the comfort.
Yeah, I mean, there's that saying, you are who you surround yourself with, and you are what you eat at a cellular level, you know?
Yeah.
You literally, whatever you put in your body, that's what is creating every single teeny tiny cell in your body. Not to put a bunch of pressure on people, but, you know.
But if you eat the salami, you are salami.
You're just straight up salami.
I know.
But you know, it's like, so drink an extra glass of water today if you don't have enough water. Hydrate your cells, you know.
Yeah.
But it's all about starting small. Some people want to start big, and they're like, okay, cool, like I'm ready to like do this whole thing, you know. And that's often how I was when I was going through like really the bulk of like my healing and all of that, and you know, eating like the autoimmune protocol and you know, doing that kind of thing. But that's not how everybody operates. So It's just really a matter of meeting people where they're at and like having this, you know, heart-to-heart conversation about their goals and what they want and why they want to eat healthier. You know, it's not just because you want to like eat well. You know, for me, it's because I want to feel energized and I want to feel peaceful and calm in my body, so that I can feel inspired, so I can tap into my inspiration to create everything that I'm creating, you know. And I'm in this really like kind of big creative push right now, and it's really exciting, and that's why I want to make sure I'm getting enough sleep and nourishing my body so that I have the energy and the wherewithal to actually produce this work and to feel fulfilled, you know.
Right.
So that I feel like well enough to like have fun.
Well, and also like, you know, as moms, I mean, I can't there are certain things, and like I kind of have a stomach of steel. Like I can pretty much eat whatever, you know, but I feel better when I eat a certain way.
Yeah.
And if I'm not eating that way, my mood definitely suffers. And if I'm not, you know, other things too, like sleep, but like I don't want to be that mom.
No, none of us do.
I'm not trying to be the mom who's like having an outburst because, you know,
because you have low blood sugar.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, so it's
but
like,
that's so common.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
know.
How many of us go through that?
Or it's like, oh, I haven't eaten yet today. I haven't had time. It's like, what do you mean you haven't eaten today?
Yeah.
Like, how are you like
functioning
with kids at all?
Yeah.
Like, I don't, you know, so for me, it's like, if I can't do it for myself, I do it so that like I'm not monster mom or monster partner who just like unloads, you know, because it's so true that like what you eat and how you eat too. Like, are you sitting down to eat, or are you eating on the go, or are you eating around a bunch of people where it's loud? Like that matters too, I think. So it's like finding out what works for you, because if you're not, then you're never reaching homeostasis, and if you're never reaching homeostasis, like how do you even know who you are? It's like, you know, like it's that's like why we lose ourselves. I think going off on a tangent, but
no, it's true. It's true. It really is like, you know, people like they want to feel better. Oh, like what supplement should I take, and like what fancy like superfood powder should I buy? And it's like, no, let's start with the basics. Let's talk about your sleep. Let's talk about what you're eating during the day. You know, let's talk about like what you're doing to move your body. And people don't always like that because you actually have to do it. But we can do it. We can create a little system for you that works for you. And we start small and we build up. And then that creates these really long-lasting habits for life. And then it's not a diet or a program.
Right.
It's your lifestyle.
Right.
You know? And then your family benefits from that too.
Oh yeah.
And then eventually like you don't feel guilty for not giving them the junk food, and then they see how much better you're feeling, and you start to talk about it and plant these little seeds in the minds of the people around you.
Yeah.
Everybody benefits. Yeah.
It's so true. Well, yeah, and like you said, you are creating space for the inspiration, and for the fun, and for the you know,
for the high quality of life that we all want. Yeah.
Well, this has been very enlightening. I've learned a lot. I feel like I know so many people with issues like autoimmune issues and thyroid issues and adrenal burnout and all of that, and like never quite understood what that meant.
Right.
So thank you.
You're
for
welcome.
educating us.
You're welcome.
And where can people find you? Obviously here, but
yes, in my little studio. So you can find me at fauziamorgan.com, and I'm sure we'll put that up so that you don't have to.
I'll put it in the notes.
Yeah,
for sure.
So you don't have to memorize the spelling. I'm at Fauzia Morgan on Instagram. I post a lot of free content, a lot of tips, so you can watch my stories.
You have a bunch of videos on your website, right?
I have videos on my website that go link to my YouTube channel. And I really recommend signing up for my mailing list if people haven't already. If you go to my website, there's a little pop-up box. Because I am sending out more and more newsletters with links to recipes and tips and announcements about things that I'm working on right now. So yeah, and then I'm on Facebook too. You can search Fauzia Morgan Nutrition and Wellness.
And if people are local and they want to come meet you, what is the process?
So you can go to my website, and you can fill out the contact me form, send me an email. You can call me. You can also go to my website and click through to schedule a free 15-minute discovery session for nutrition consulting, even for facials if people have stuff going on that they really need help with. And so then we can actually have an actual 15-minute phone conversation so that you can get an idea of what I do, and most importantly, I get an idea of what's going on with you, see if I can help you, see if we're a good fit. I'm located in Eaton Square at the edge of Waikiki. I validate parking, which is a bonus. So yeah, so that's how you can find me.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you,
Yeah,
Fauzia. I always love our conversations.
Me too.
And I feel like we might not have one for a little while.
At least not on
video.
Not on video.
No, but I look forward to the next one.
Me too.
So thank you.
Yeah, thank you.